What dark secrets lie behind the gentle smile of a grandmother? In the summer of 2015, the peaceful city of St. Petersburg, Russia, was about to uncover a truth so disturbing, it would shake the very foundation of what we believe about human nature. The discovery of dismembered human remains in a local pond would unleash a cascade of revelations, leading investigators to the most unlikely of killers. Picture, if you will, an elderly woman, 68 years old, soft-spoken and polite, living in a typical apartment building. Her neighbors knew her as a courteous resident who spoke multiple languages and carried herself with dignity. Yet beneath this carefully crafted facade of normalcy lurked one of Russia's most shocking serial killers. Welcome to True Crime Stories Archive, your gateway to the chilling world of real-life horror. Here, we delve into the darkest corners of humanity, unearthing terrifying stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about human nature. If you're fascinated by the psychology of killers and the intricate web of criminal investigations, make sure to subscribe to join our community of true crime enthusiasts. The story of Tamara Samsonova begins in the industrial city of Ufa, Russia, where she was born on April 25, 1947. Her early years, shrouded in the post-war atmosphere of the Soviet Union, gave little indication of the darkness that would later consume her life. The city, home to roughly 20,000 inhabitants at the time, was like countless other Soviet industrial centers functional, austere, and focused on rebuilding after the devastating effects of World War II. As a young woman, Tamara displayed remarkable academic prowess, particularly in linguistics. Her intellectual journey led her to make a bold move, traveling 14 hours across the country to attend the prestigious Moscow State Linguistic University. This decision would mark the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one that would eventually lead her down an unimaginable path. In Moscow, Tamara flourished academically, mastering multiple languages and building what appeared to be a promising future. Her linguistic abilities would later serve her well, though not in the way anyone might have expected. After completing her studies, she made another significant move, this time to Leningrad, which would later become known as St. Petersburg, a city of nearly 4 million souls where her dark saga would ultimately unfold. It was in the early 1970s, amid the bustling streets of Leningrad, that Tamara met Alexei. Their courtship led to marriage, and the couple settled into a newly constructed panel house in the K-China district. These panel houses, a common sight across the Soviet Union in the post-war era, were hastily constructed to accommodate the growing urban population. While they might have lacked aesthetic appeal, they provided affordable housing for countless families trying to build their lives in the expanding city. Tamara's professional life seemed to be thriving. She secured a position as a travel agent, where her linguistic talents made her an invaluable employee. Her ability to communicate fluently in multiple languages opened doors, leading to an even more prestigious position at the Grand Hotel Europe, an establishment known for hosting international visitors. For 16 years, she worked there, building a reputation as a competent and pleasant employee before eventually retiring. However, the veneer of normalcy began to crack shortly after her retirement when Alexei, her husband of 3 decades, mysteriously vanished. Tamara approached the authorities with a story that would later prove to be the first thread in a tapestry of deception. She claimed her husband had abandoned her for another woman, a tale that seemed plausible enough at the time that it didn't raise any immediate red flags with law enforcement. Following Alexei's disappearance, Tamara began renting out rooms in her apartment, ostensibly to supplement her income. Yet this decision would mark the beginning of a horrifying pattern. Her tenants, it seemed, had an unusual tendency to disappear, and those who didn't would quickly move out, driven away by what neighbors would later describe as deeply disturbing behavior. The sounds emanating from Tamara's apartment began to draw attention. Neighbors reported hearing unusual noises, loud banging on radiators, frequent yelling, and other disturbances that pierced the typical quiet of their residential building. These acoustic disturbances would later take on a far more sinister significance in light of what was to come. During this period, Tamara maintained detailed diaries, documenting her life in an unusual mix of Russian, English, and German. These journals, which would later become crucial evidence, contained seemingly mundane entries about daily activities, her sleep patterns, coffee consumption, and medication routines. But interspersed among these ordinary notes were dark revelations that would eventually expose the true nature of their author. Beyond her diary writing, Tamara cultivated diverse interests that, in retrospect, painted a disturbing picture. She composed music and wrote songs, but more ominously, she accumulated an extensive collection of books about black magic and astrology. These occult interests, while not criminal in themselves, would later take on a more sinister significance when viewed alongside her other activities. The year 2014 brought a pivotal moment in Tamara's story when she decided to renovate her apartment. This decision coincided with her introduction to 79-year-old Valentina Ilanova. A seemingly perfect arrangement presented itself. Valentina needed someone to help with household chores, and Tamara, at 68, needed temporary accommodation while her apartment underwent renovations. Initially, the arrangement appeared beneficial for both parties. However, the facade of harmony quickly crumbled. Valentina became increasingly frustrated with Tamara's presence, noting that her new housemate wasn't fulfilling her promised duties. Instead of being helpful, Tamara had essentially become an unwanted squatter. Despite Valentina's repeated requests for Tamara to leave, she stubbornly refused to vacate the premises. The situation reached its breaking point in July 2015 over what might seem, on the surface, to be a trivial matter: unwashed dishes. But this mundane domestic dispute would trigger a sequence of events that would finally expose Tamara's true nature to the world. Instead of complying with Valentina's requests or simply finding alternative accommodation, Tamara's mind turned to a far darker solution. In a calculated move that revealed the true extent of her malevolence, Tamara devised a plan to eliminate what she perceived as her problem. She traveled to a nearby city, where she somehow managed to convince a pharmacist to sell her 50 pills of phenazepam, a prescription medication similar to Xanax that was developed in Russia for treating neurological disorders like insomnia and anxiety. Upon returning to Valentina's apartment, Tamara enacted her sinister plan. She prepared Olivier salad, a traditional Russian dish consisting of peas, potatoes, carrots, onions, pickles, eggs, meat, and mayonnaise. But this wasn't a gesture of reconciliation. Instead, Tamara laced the dish with all 50 pills, transforming a traditional comfort food into a lethal weapon. After serving the poisoned meal, Tamara retired to bed, waiting for her deadly scheme to take effect. Around 2 a.m., she ventured to the kitchen, where she found Valentina's body lying on the floor. What followed would showcase the true depths of Tamara's depravity. Rather than calling for help or showing any remorse, she proceeded to dismember Valentina's body right there in the kitchen, later explaining to authorities that she chose this location because Valentina's body was too heavy to move to the bathroom. The disposal of Valentina's remains demonstrated both calculation and callousness. Tamara wrapped the dismembered parts in pieces of a shower curtain, placed them in plastic bags, and made 7 separate trips to a nearby pond to dispose of the evidence. These movements were captured by CCTV cameras footage that would later prove crucial to the investigation. The discovery of her crimes came 3 days later, on July 26, 2015, when a couple walking their dog near the pond made a gruesome discovery. Their pet's interest in a suspicious bag led them to uncover a headless, limbless torso, a finding that would finally begin to unravel Tamara's web of violence. The investigation gained momentum rapidly, aided by several crucial pieces of evidence. A witness had contacted police on the night of the murder, reporting suspicious activity of someone disposing of bags in the pond. Adding to the mounting evidence, a social worker had attempted to check on Valentina but had been denied entry by Tamara, raising immediate red flags with authorities. The police investigation moved swiftly, connecting the dismembered remains to Valentina. When they arrived at Valentina's residence, they found Tamara, who displayed an unnervingly welcoming attitude, inviting them inside without hesitation. The apartment told its own gruesome story. Investigators discovered blood traces in both the kitchen and bathroom, along with a conspicuously missing shower curtain. When confronted with the evidence, Tamara's response was startlingly direct. Without attempting to maintain her facade of innocence, she immediately confessed to murdering Valentina. Her explanation for the crime was as disturbing as it was bizarre. She claimed she had panicked about living in her own home and calculated that killing Valentina would secure her 5 more months of residence until her renovations were complete. But the true extent of Tamara's crimes was yet to be revealed. During their search of the apartment, investigators made a chilling discovery: Tamara's diaries. These notebooks, written in 3 different languages, contained far more than the mundane daily entries they appeared to be at first glance. Pause. Before we continue with this story, allow me to share something important with you. Looking at our channel analytics, it's clear that many of you watching our true crime stories are not yet subscribed. In fact, about 85% of our viewers haven't hit that subscribe button. If you're finding value in our content and want to support what we do, please take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications. It helps us continue bringing you these meticulously researched true crime stories, and ensures you won't miss any future uploads. Now let's get back to our story. Within their pages lay detailed accounts of multiple murders, each described with a disturbing level of precision. Among the victims detailed in her diary was one of her earliest tenants, a man named Vadia. The diary described in graphic detail how she had dismembered his body in her bathroom, disposed of the parts in plastic bags, and scattered them across different districts of the city. Another entry described the murder of a 44-year-old man named Sergei Bavin, whose dismembered body had been found in 2003 on the same street mentioned in Tamara's diary entries. The diary entries became increasingly disturbing as investigators delved deeper. They discovered that Tamara had documented a possible fascination with cannibalism, though these claims were never officially verified due to lack of physical evidence. She wrote about allegedly consuming parts of her victims, including their lungs, legs, and portions of their heads, before disposing of the remaining evidence, a detail that, while unconfirmed, added another layer of horror to an already grotesque case. The investigation took an even darker turn when police found Sergei's business card and traces of his blood in Tamara's apartment, confirming at least one of her diary confessions. In a particularly unsettling entry, she wrote about her affection for Valentina, her final known victim, making the brutal nature of the murder even more perplexing. On July 29, 2015, Tamara was brought before the Frunzensky District Court of St. Petersburg. The proceedings themselves were as bizarre as the crimes, with Tamara being placed in a cage within the courtroom. Her behavior during the trial varied wildly. At times she appeared deeply ashamed, hiding her face in her hands and weeping, while at other moments she displayed an unsettling pride, even flirting with the court and media, blowing kisses and preening for the cameras. During her court appearances, Tamara's statements were equally erratic. She admitted to the court that all her killings had been deliberate, claiming she had been preparing for this moment for the past decade. She made the disturbing assertion that Valentina's murder was meant to close the chapter, suggesting she had intended it to be her final act before exposure. Adding to the complexity of the case, Tamara claimed she was being haunted by a maniac upstairs, who forced her to kill, hinting at possible mental health issues. Her comportment in court ranged from complete disorientation, appearing not to know where she was, to moments of striking lucidity when discussing her crimes. In November 2015, after several months in custody, Tamara underwent a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation. The results were definitive: she was deemed a clear danger to both herself and society. By December of that same year, she was transferred to a specialized psychiatric prison facility in Kazan, while authorities continued their investigation. As investigators dug deeper into Tamara's past through interviews with family, friends, and neighbors, a disturbing pattern of behavior emerged. Many recalled her frequent declarations that she would one day achieve fame and notoriety. She would often boast about causing a sensation, though she never specified exactly what form this sensation would take. These statements, seemingly innocuous at the time, took on a sinister new meaning in light of her crimes. A neighbor who had known Tamara for 15 years provided particularly revealing information about her fascination with Andrei Chikatilo, also known as the Red Ripper, a notorious serial killer who had murdered and cannibalized at least 52 women between the late 1970s and 1990s. This neighbor noted Tamara's extensive knowledge about this murderer, suggesting a possible source of inspiration for her own crimes. The same neighbor also revealed a crucial piece of evidence years earlier. Tamara had borrowed their hacksaw and never returned it. This seemingly minor detail took on horrific significance given the nature of her crimes. The neighbor's other observations, while somewhat peculiar, included details about Tamara's habit of sitting topless by her window, information that painted a picture of increasingly erratic behavior. The investigation also uncovered that Tamara had been hospitalized in mental institutions at least 3 times over the previous 15 years, with doctors suggesting a diagnosis of schizophrenia. This condition, characterized by hallucinations, delusions, and thought disorders, potentially explained her claims about being haunted by a maniac upstairs. Perhaps most chilling was the testimony from one of Tamara's old school friends, who revealed a long-held secret about the suspected murder of Tamara's mother-in-law. The friend had remained silent for years, terrorized by Tamara's explicit threat to cut her into pieces and throw her to the dogs if she ever spoke about the incident. The true extent of Tamara's crimes remains uncertain. Different investigative reports suggest varying numbers of victims, with some indicating 11 murders and others pointing to as many as 14. Many of her tenants who mysteriously disappeared are suspected to be among her victims, though confirming these deaths proved challenging without physical evidence. Her detailed diary entries referencing both cannibalism and occult practices added another layer of complexity to the investigation, potentially explaining her collection of black magic literature. Police strongly suspect that Tamara's husband Alexei, who had allegedly run off with another woman, was actually among her earliest victims. However, like many aspects of this case, this remains unconfirmed due to the absence of physical evidence, or a body. Today, Tamara Samsonova continues to live in a high-security psychiatric prison hospital. Despite the passage of time, she has never provided a full confession or revealed the complete extent of her crimes. The true number of her victims, the locations of missing bodies, and her actual motives may forever remain shrouded in mystery. What makes this case particularly haunting is its defiance of typical serial killer profiles. Tamara wasn't motivated by financial gain, nor did she fit the usual demographic patterns of serial killers. Her seemingly senseless acts of violence, committed without clear motive or gain, stand out as particularly disturbing in the annals of criminal history. This case challenges our understanding of human nature and reminds us that evil can wear the most unassuming faces. If you found this story compelling, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think drove Tamara to commit these horrific acts? Join our community of true crime enthusiasts as we continue to explore the darkest corners of human behavior. Remember to turn on notifications to stay updated with our latest uploads. Until next time, stay safe, and remember sometimes the most dangerous predators are hiding in plain sight.